About 50 years ago, an astronaut returning from the moon experienced things that he couldn't find a scientific explanation for. So, with some colleagues, he launched a new science focused on the mind and how it works in the body and across space and time. It's the field of Noetics, where the tools of modern science are used to help us understand how what we think and feel affects us and the world around us. Now, this is Dr. Ruth Miller's Noetic Moments from the studios of KXCR Community Radio in Florence, Oregon.
And this is Noetic Moments, where we explore the field of research that discovers what consciousness is, what it does, how it works, and how our lives could be very different if we understood it better. And I am Ruth Miller. I'm a longtime student of consciousness, cybernetics, and anthropology, and through this series of programs, I'm introducing some of the people whose work has defined this field of research, and I'm explaining some of their ideas and experiments. I'll also explore some relevant news items and answer questions that you send to my email address, ruth@noeticmoments.org. And Noetic is spelled Noetic. Well, since we began this series of programs, we've focused on the various models people have developed to explain our mental and emotional experience and the experiments that have supported and sometimes extended those models. In the process, we learned that in spite of what most of the medical world calls consciousness, most of what goes on in the mind is not in our conscious awareness at all, but goes on in unconscious processes. From those early researchers 100 years ago and more, we learned that our minds can be thought of as having three aspects: what we're aware of, our personal awareness, or what's usually called the conscious mind; what we aren't aware of, that's keeping our bodies going and also includes our fears and beliefs about potential threats and dangers, which we'll call the individual subconscious mind; and what we aren't aware of that enlivens our beings and guides us in our actions, which we can call the individual superconscious mind. From later research, we learned that we can change our state of consciousness and shift which aspects of mind we are aware of. We can expand which aspects we're aware of as well, and in the process expand what we're capable of in the moment and over time. From the neuroscientists, we learned that while it's possible to say where in the brain various processes are active, no one has yet been able to state where memories are stored or how ideas and thoughts are formed. We also saw that many responses in our body happen far faster than nerve impulses or chemicals can travel, and they often show up in the body before we're aware of it. So it's clear that who and what we are, our consciousness, our decisions, our choices, aren't all originating in the brain. As a result, many scientists have come to consider the possibility that what we call mind is not the product of the electrochemical activity of the brain at all, but is in fact the activity of a kind of field that surrounds and permeates the whole body, which some researchers, along with the teachers of ancient traditions that we call shamans or yogis, have suggested looks like a glowing egg shape extending from below our knees to a few inches above our head. These researchers suggest then that the brain is best understood as a receiver-transmitter. It receives messages from the mind and transmits those to the body, and vice versa. We also learned that the brain modifies whatever it receives, from both the senses and the mind, to fit past patterns of experience that are stored as hardwired connections among the neurons, following Begg's principle that, quote, neurons that fire together, wire together, unquote. What they do is form a default network that means we tend to see, hear, and feel what we expect or believe we will experience. This field we call mind appears to be at least partly electromagnetic because it's possible to measure electromagnetic activity for several inches and sometimes several feet around the body. Now, some experiments have demonstrated that a person's mind continues to perceive and process for as much as several hours, even when the brain and heart are flatlined and the person has been declared dead. This lack of brain activity may explain why most reports from those who've been through such what are called near-death experiences do not fit the patterns of expectation stored in their brain's neuronal connections. So they have a very hard time describing it when they come back. Mind, then, is a field, a pattern of energy that exists regardless of whether the body is functioning. We'll call that the superconscious. That mind permeates and develops with the body and the brain as the subconscious. And it is told by the senses through the brain what the world out there is like in our personal awareness. Now, every field is a unique pattern of vibrations that's different from other fields. And some experiments have demonstrated that minds can vibrate along similar patterns. They resonate with each other. Such resonant minds are able to sense when the other resonant mind is focusing attention on them or maybe about to come home. And the bodies are actually changed when another resonant mind changes, even though they can't see or hear the change. Such experiments help explain how the belief of a care provider in a treatment can help a patient receiving that treatment experience healing. It also explains mental and spiritual healing and what's called the placebo effect. We've learned, too, that mind affects energy and matter in a variety of ways, both in the body and outside of it. In the famous double-slit experiments in quantum physics, the subatomic building blocks of the universe show up as energy or matter, depending on whether a mind is present to observe them. Now, for decades, individuals have changed patterns of numbers in what should be random grids on their computer screens, and the collective human mind has been demonstrated to change the readouts from similar random number generators in the network of computers run by the Global Consciousness Project. Because of the nature of fields, and because of things like the Global Consciousness Project, a growing number of scientists are seeing our individual field of mind as part of a larger field, a collective consciousness, a global brain, a noosphere. And more scientists are saying that it extends far beyond the Earth. They're equating the larger field of mind with the quantum or zero-point field out of which all matter and energy arises. Some call it even the Akashic field, using the Sanskrit term for the essence of everything that exists in the material world. We also heard from a couple of physicists using equations that describe aspects of quantum mechanics, relativity, and computer learning algorithms to describe the role of consciousness in the formation of our material experience. Based on all of that, we began to explore some of the more popular ideas about how the mind works, including the law of attraction, how the universe reflects what our mind has been focused on, including things like intuition, insight, and that increasingly understood process of channeling, accessing the information in the quantum or Akashic field. We've also looked at dreams and how the dreaming process affects the body and consciousness, and the effects of music on the brain and body, and our connections with other fields of mind. These past few weeks, we've been looking at the role of mind and our state of consciousness on the healing process, and the ways that we can enhance or slow down healing through our thoughts, emotions, and visualizations. You can catch up on our past shows on our website, www.noeticmoments.org, where you'll also find links to the clips, books, and authors that I mention. Now, today, having discovered that mind is the source of signals that the brain sends to the body, and that various mental practices have been demonstrated to actually change the state of the body, then what is the mechanism by which we can use mind to address the body's issues? For many conditions, the answer lies in one network of nerves, known as the vagus nerve. Here's a description from a yoga institute in India.
Having access to parts of our brain that control primal instincts like fear and fight or flight response. Hence, a healthy vagus nerve is essential for leadership, and decision making. The functioning of the vagus nerve can be impaired by stress, anxiety, poor lifestyle, smoking, drinking alcohol and overworking, lack of exercise, proper nutrition and sleep. When the vagus nerve is not able to perform to the best of its ability, the body and mind become susceptible to a range of diseases like depression, anxiety, obesity, cardiovascular disorders, hypertension, diabetes, digestive disorders, chronic inflammation, kidney malfunction, infertility, and even Parkinson's. Doctors have started stimulating the vagus nerve with electric impulses from a device that increases its activity to help with diseases like depression. However, there are natural ways to stimulate the vagus nerve as well, such as breathing, pranayama and meditation, exercise, yoga, omega-3 and probiotic-rich diet, singing and chanting, splashing cold water, laughing, hugging, massages.
So the vagus nerve runs from the base of the brain down through the throat into the lungs and splits off a little bit, through the heart, splits off a little bit, through the stomach, splits off a little bit, and down into the gut. It is the connection between the gut and the brain, and you may have been hearing about things like there is a connection between them, and if the gut isn't healthy, the brain isn't healthy. Well, vice versa also. So what this nerve, collection of nerves really does, and vagus means wanderer, it wanders through the body. But what this collection of nerves does is help to regulate all of those things. And the heart is part of that. So as the heart is functioning appropriately, then everything else along the vagus nerve functions appropriately. If the brain is getting information, signals that say fight or flight, then nothing along that system is functioning properly. They're all lined up for fight or flight. And so those of us who have lived in stressful environments where we're constantly having to feel threatened and protect ourselves, etc., end up wearing out those other systems because the vagus nerve keeps telling them, oh, it's dangerous out there. So a huge part of what we need to do in order to help heal all of those systems in the body is help to restore the vagus nerve and the vagal system to a state of full function and flow. And that's what our next speaker is going to talk with us about.
When we think about your vagus nerve, we often talk about vagal nerve tone. The terminology can get a little bit confusing, but if you think about this vagus nerve and you think about its role in your rest and digest response, when you have high vagal tone, that means your ability to self-soothe is really high. That doesn't mean you don't get stressed out. That doesn't mean you don't get anxious or worried. You will. But it does mean that you're able to respond rather than react. That means when somebody cuts you off in traffic, rather than spinning out with anger for 3 hours, within a couple of minutes, you're able to respond and collect yourself. That doesn't mean you never get worried or anxious about the future, but it does mean that you're able to let it go at night, put your head on the pillow, and go to bed. That would be indicative of high vagal tone. Now, the opposite is what a lot of us suffer from. Low vagal tone. We're not able to self-soothe. What happens is somebody cuts you in line at the grocery store, and you're angry and ruminating about it for the rest of your day. What happens is you get an angry email from a vendor at work, and again, you just can't let it go, and it's 11 o'clock and you're spinning and spinning and spinning. This is low vagal tone. To check in with your vagus nerve, to check in with your nervous system in general, there's a few techniques that can be really helpful. The first one I'll share with you is called the nasal cycle test. Some of you have done this with me before. It's a very simple test. Doesn't work for everyone, but it's pretty effective for most people. Take your index finger, put it underneath your nose, and let's exhale 3 times through your nose. What we're looking for is to identify which nostril, right or left, is dominant. Which nostril is the air flowing through more freely? Your right nostril is indicative of a sympathetic nervous system state. Your left nostril is indicative of a parasympathetic state. Let's check again. Right nostril, fight or flight. Left nostril, rest and digest. Why is this relevant? Well, it's not that fight or flight is bad and rest and digest is good. There are times in our day when we'd like to be stimulated with our sympathetic nervous system. We need blood flow to our muscles and our heart and our lungs. We need to get things done. But there are other times when we need to be cool, calm, and collected. So if it's 11 o'clock at night, like I mentioned before, and you're wired but tired, and you're in your right nostril, that's indicative of low vagal tone. Let me give you another test. Now, this is a weird one. You need your phone, so hold up your phone and put on a selfie video, stick out your tongue, and make a ha sound like this. Ah. And now take a look at the video. What you're looking for is in the back of your throat. There's this thing, you've seen it before when you're brushing your teeth. It's called your uvula. Your uvula is this little piece of tissue that hangs down the back of your throat. And because your vagus nerve innervates your soft palate, remember I told you this nerve wanders all over the place. It also wanders up into the back of your mouth, your soft palate. When you have a vagal nerve dysregulation, sometimes that uvula can actually be deviated. It can be off to the side. This test is really easy to do with a selfie video or just in the mirror in the bathroom, and it can give you an indication if you're in an imbalanced state. The third technique is subjective, but it works really well too. What we're looking to do is cultivate interoception, understanding what's going on inside your body, not just what's going on in the news or in your environment. And a simple way to do that is to close your eyes and check in. How are you feeling right now? Are you ruminating about things that happened earlier today? Are you worried and anxious about things in the future? Do you feel like there's a dark cloud of anxiety hovering over your head? Or are you able to let things go? This simple check-in, again, can be indicative of high vagal tone, if you can self-soothe, or low vagal tone, if you're out of balance.
So paying attention to what's happening in the body can be very helpful. And I hope you've found 2 or 3 techniques there that you can use to know whether your body is functioning in balance and harmony or whether it's out of balance and harmony, leading to various forms of distress and disease in the body. And again, using those techniques of breathing and meditation, of yoga and exercise, can help us to restore that whole system that the vagus nerve is sending signals to from the brain, and those systems are sending signals to the brain to help the body function. Now, to learn more about this amazing aspect of our body, you might want to explore the book Vagus Nerve Secrets. Subtitle, Your Definitive Guide to Freedom from Anxiety, Depression, Trauma, PTSD, Inflammation, and Autoimmunity Through Self-Healing Techniques and Exercises. Phew! But it's really worth looking at. The author is Maria Hampton. The book was published in 2019, and it's available on both Kindle and in paperback. In the description, it says, when Maria Hampton found that her vagus nerve was damaged after using a powerful antibiotic, she began searching for answers. When traditional medicine had inconsistent and unhelpful advice, she embarked on a journey which would reveal the secrets of an extraordinary nerve which few people have truly examined. It says that she breaks down what she discovers about this powerful nerve and how it could be the secret to controlling and overcoming countless chronic illnesses. She shares her experiences in a personal and insightful manner, pulling back the curtain. So some of the things that she covers in the table of contents: what is the vagus nerve? Why does it matter? The countless health benefits of this nerve's stimulation, which diseases are associated with the vagus nerve and how to prevent them, natural ways you can stimulate this nerve, how the vagus nerve can help combat anxiety, depression, and trauma, as well as inflammation, autoimmune disease, fibromyalgia, and more. She draws on proven scientifically backed advice and provides a detailed breakdown of the diseases that a healthy vagal nerve tone can prevent, as well as activities and exercises you can use. So there you have Maria Hampton, Vagus Nerve Secrets. You will find that useful if you are finding yourself wrestling with strange symptoms. But what's really interesting to me is that the techniques we use to increase the tone on the vagus nerve, as you heard in that very first description, are the same techniques we use to restore a sense of well-being to the body as a whole. So when we learn to relax the body, when we learn to visualize, when we learn to breathe in a way that is aware and calming, all those things that we've talked about in the last few weeks specifically address the issues of a vagal nerve tone. Well, if you just tuned in, you are listening to Noetic Moments, the show that explores what consciousness is, what it does, and how our lives could be better if we understood it more fully. I am Ruth Miller, and that sound tells me we need to look at what's going on in the world today and what you, the listeners, have asked me about. In the news these days is a lot of description of what can be called victimization. Several times in the last few days, it's become clear that the idea of people being victims is deeply woven into what we call the news. And it really doesn't matter whether you're reading news stories, whether you're reading the newspaper, whether you're watching the news on TV or listening to the radio. Well over half of what you hear will generally be about how someone has been victimized by someone else. And what's really interesting is when we buy into that understanding of how the world works, it's very hard for us to be powerful in ourselves. So even when we're looking at something like today's program, talking about how we can help restore health in the body by doing processes that bring the whole system into alignment, if we are being constantly bombarded with and accept the idea that someone out there can hurt us or something out there can hurt us and that we are victims of what is going on out there, it becomes very difficult to actually implement these tools that say we can take on this process for ourselves and make a difference. So I wanted to bring that into the awareness of all of my wonderful listeners because it's so easy to just allow these things to slip in and not realize the effect they're having on us. If you can allow yourself to not engage in the kind of news that is focused on how people are hurting or being hurt by something in their lives or in the world, but can find some of the more positive news outlets out there, Good News Network being one of them, but there's half a dozen of them, where people are actually acting from their higher knowing or from their just good sense or from their deeper hearts, you may find that whatever symptoms you may have been wrestling with will be decreased simply because you have begun to undo the idea that you can be a victim of anything outside of you. Yes, that's what it means to be fully conscious and aware in this noetic universe that we are living in. Well, that's it for today's show. The next time we get together, we'll look at more of the research being done in an attempt to understand what consciousness is, what it really does, and how we can experience life differently when we use it fully. We are out of time for today, but remember, you can continue the exploration on our website, www.noeticmoments.org, where there is a list of all our past recordings and the titles and other resources we refer to on this show, and where you can send me your comments and questions. There's a form, and I'll do my best to get those answered the next time we're on the air. For now, thanks for joining me here on Noetic Moments, recorded in the studios of KXCR Community Radio in Florence, Oregon. And have a wonderful week.
You've been listening to Dr. Ruth Miller's Noetic Moments. This program is produced in the studios of KXCR Community Radio in beautiful Florence, Oregon, supported by you, our listeners. Our theme music is Tumbling Planets, composed and performed by Jeff Lovejoy. To hear this program again or learn more about noetic sciences, search our website, www.noeticmoments.org.
Well, hi there. This is Ruth Miller again, and I am back to tell you that if you missed the March 11 workshop on how healing happens here in Florence, you might want to attend it in Waltport on April 22 at the Ocean Unity Church, which is in the storefront across from the hardware store and the grocery store on Highway 34 in Waltport. April 22, 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. We'll have a presentation where I walk through the process that the body uses to heal itself, and we'll have some opportunities for people to share experiences and questions. That's 1 to 4 on April 22nd. Hope to see you there. Bye.